Welcome everyone to this exciting fight chat. Today, we have the privilege of learning from the esteemed Dr. Obed, right, a renowned expert in the field of software engineering. Buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey filled with valuable insights, practical tips, and inspiring stories that will fuel your passion for software engineering. Without further ado, let me just introduce myself. My name is Joshua Alano. I'm a software engineering student at the African Leadership University. Together with me, I have the esteemed Dr. Obed. So let's have Dr. Obed introduce himself before I proceed.
Sure. Thank you so much, Joshua. And I'm happy to be here today. And thanks for the invite as well. I am Obed, as you mentioned. And I mean, the accolades that you are bringing on board, I don't think I wear that hat yet. But then, yeah, I'm just one curious young guy who is striving to do his best and in the process also trying to pull people who are ready to be pulled along. And just a bit of context. So I come from a health background as a pharmacist, but then I got introduced to programming tech in general back when I was in high school. My first entry into tech was in robotics, but
Oh
then
wow.
it was more of I was one of the best students in the school, so I was selected to be part of the robotics team. I didn't know anything about robotics, but then I just happened to find myself in there. And it happened such that I realized, oh, the people that I was competing with in school were all great at these things. Like they knew a lot of tech stuff, but I had no idea. So that was when it hit
Mm,
me that I needed to start taking things outside the books. Like, hey, you're good outside the books. There is some life out there, right? So that's how I got introduced, got inspired by my colleagues who were good at all of these tech things, moving things around, were coding some I don't even remember, but this was in 2012, thereabout.
wow. Wow. Wow.
Then I went to the library to look for something that will introduce me to tech, right? And eventually I landed on a book called HTML, Build Your Own Website with HTML and CSS. So that's how my entry into tech started. But after high school, I went to school for
Okay.
6 years to do pharmacy. In the course of studying pharmacy, I was also teaching myself programming. And after school, I kind of worked for 1 year, then decided to switch from pharmacy and get into tech. So I stopped working and I took a 3 months program in cloud computing and wrote the
Oh
AWS cloud certification examination. Afterwards, I joined ALS software engineering and I completed earlier this year and currently working with the ALS team. Yeah, so that is my background in summary. And thank you, Joshua,
yeah,
once
yeah.
again.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you on the call. So, Dr. Obed, I want to ask you the first question, right? That students kind of have. What do you think is a common frustration here among beginners?
Mhm. Frustration, fear.
Yes.
I I think in my interactions with people, a lot of the time is based on what others have said. I mean, I've heard that programming is very difficult. It's quite challenging. I mean, I can't do it. It's for smart people only. It's for math geniuses. Like all those things that people have said is usually the more reason why people do not want to, or some people fear and not want to get into it. Right. And I personally had my fair share of those things. At one point in time, I even thought that maybe I don't want to go that route anymore. There were easier alternatives. So there
Mm,
is within I mean, if I can remember correctly, I think between 2018 2018 and 2020, there was a change in mindset for me in that I got a contract. I think that was in 2017 thereabout. I got a contract to build a website and a web app for a hotel, and that was to build their website and build an app for managing that hotel. And that was the time that I was learning PHP to add on as a backend language to the front end stuff that I'd been learning at the time.
Mm.
However, this contract, they expected me to, come in as a company. So I had to partner with someone who was already building a company and go to them and say, okay, I'm a company. This is my company, so that they will award me the contract and we'll do it for them. And I happen to partner with a very good friend of mine. We still get to work together. Even today, I called him not long ago and
Wow.
we went for that contract. It's okay, but then this colleague of mine uses WordPress. And at the time, the WordPress I knew was WordPress.com. I didn't know about WordPress.org, which is a different thing. And he uses WordPress.org to do all this stuff. So it took me like close to a month to write a code for this thing. And this guy showed me how you could do it in like 3 days with WordPress. I was like, oh my goodness, like why am I even struggling to learn all of these things? So he introduced me to WordPress. I began using it. I learned more about it. I built several websites with it. In fact, when I was running my agency, that was the major tool that I was using. Right.
Mm.
So within that period, I think it was now getting into my head. Like, if programming is so difficult and this is an easy route, why do I want to struggle and go through that route instead of doing this easy one? But eventually, I decided that no. I think in around 2020, I 2019, 2020, thereabouts. So there was a shift back to learning programming because my boss called me. The software they were using in their pharmacy cost a lot of money
Mm.
annually. They had to renew annually. So he was asking if I could build something that they could use. I was like, yeah, I can do that. And that's how I go back to programming again. And I built that. And in 2020, I advanced the software. Eventually, I started making money from selling that particular software. Like, okay,
Wow. That was a breakthrough.
oh yeah, yeah. Like, I got a lot of money from that. I think it was even paying me well because at the time government hadn't paid us as pharmacists and I was surviving with this extra skill of mine, and I saw that I could make so much money from it. Like, by selling one software, it was getting close to what I would take as my monthly salary as a pharmacist. So I decided,
Wow.
I know, I'm not going to chicken on this, irrespective of how difficult it is, right? And that's the mindset of people. And the thing is that our reality is usually what we hear often and often. Like, when people begin to
Mm.
say this and you keep listening to that, it becomes your reality. So the moment you're even getting into it, you think that it's so difficult that you can't do it. And
Mm.
that's the problem. And that's where the fear comes from. And this fear is now coupled with the frustration of immediately you start and you try something and it's challenging. Like, yeah, like the brain is clicking and saying, they told you so. They
You
told
can't do
you.
it.
You
I
can't
don't
do
do
it. It's so difficult. You can't do it. Why did you even waste your time? You've
it.
wasted 3 months of your time trying to learn this thing, which is so difficult, right? So that I think that's the major fear, and coupled with the possible challenges that will come your way when you start, and that is what usually prevents people. But that is not to say that that's the truth, right?
Mm.
And I said earlier that it becomes your truth when you hear it often and often. Like, the moment you were giving birth to the very things that you've been told till now, you think that that is the truth. Like, truth
Yes.
in
Yes.
itself. We can have a different conversation around it, but something that you've heard over and over. So that is not the reality. You have to face the reality and define it for yourself. Like,
Mm.
I could have accepted the fact that it was difficult, but then for me as an individual, even in pharmacy school, that is one thing I used to tell myself. Like the difficult things, if you do it, you set yourself apart. Like the
Yes.
competition is usually at the easy stuff. A lot of people can do the easy stuff. So if you want to be in that huge competition, then go do the easy stuff. But if you want to set yourself apart and open yourself up to the various opportunities that are available, then you want to do the difficult stuff.
That is really really insightful, and yeah, that is really insightful. But then some people are self-motivated guys, while some are not self-motivated guys.
Yeah.
So as a beginner, now we know we there's a fear and there's this frustration. But then you said it's just a shift in mindset. Okay, so it means how do people now stay motivated? Because these guys are just beginners, right? They're just beginners. So how do they stay
Yeah.
motivated now?
So I see motivation as a fuel when it comes to the journey that you are talking about, right? And if you set up to travel right now and you take a car, for instance, you fill the tank with some fuel in order to move. No matter how good you are at driving or how talented you are, well trained, how good your engine is, all of those things, for as long as your fuel finishes, you can't move. Like if there's no fuel, you can go. All right. So you really need the fuel to be able to go on this particular journey that you want to go to. And the reason I say motivation is the fuel is that it is the one thing that will keep you going even when difficult times come. So the question about how do I stay motivated, especially for people who aren't already motivated, is very laudable. And to think about it, I think everyone has a different sort of motivation. Like we all have the things that motivate us, and that is the very first thing you want to consider. Like, what are the things that motivate you as an individual? And I think the underlying element should always be your why. Why did you even choose to go on this journey in the first place? Why are you trying to learn software engineering, or why are you trying to learn programming and any other technology that you're trying to learn? You have to now appreciate it from that angle. What is your why for doing this thing? If you have a strong why, then you can always look back to the why. So I started this thing because of ABC. At almost any point in time when you feel like giving up or you're feeling too tired to continue or anything like that, you just have to go back to your why. So in ALS, when students start the program, we usually encourage them to write down their why and paste it somewhere where you can see it regularly. Get exposed to your motivation. That is the why you started the program. So why are you trying to achieve the things that you are trying to achieve? We've mentioned about the frustration it comes with and all, but why exactly do you want to do it? So write it down. That is the first thing. And this applies to those of you who may not be self-motivated or may have a strong why. But there are others who also do not have that strong why that we are talking about. Maybe you don't know why you started this in the first place. You just felt that, hey, everybody is talking about this thing. Let me get started with it. Let me also learn some. I think it is a cool skill to go for, or I didn't choose this course. Maybe the university gave it to me. This wasn't my passion. But then you find yourself in there and you really, deep within, you know that you want to keep going, but then you don't have the motivation. I think the very first thing I will advise for somebody like that is for you to go in search of motivation. There are a lot of things that can motivate you on this journey. For instance, personally, I love building startups. Like I love running companies, building products. Those are the things that inspire me. I feel so happy when I'm able to do things like that. So the first place I look for motivation is go around looking for people who are building companies. Like go to YouTube, look for people who are building companies, software engineers who are building companies. Let them share their experiences. So when I watch those videos, I get motivated about doing this thing, about keeping on this journey. So that is one of the key things that you'd want to do as an individual. try to find a place where you get your source of motivation. That is very key. Where are you getting motivation from? So you go on and look for those places.
That is cool. That is cool. That is cool. Yeah. So for we beginner, let me use that word we. For we beginners, we there's this thing called tutorial hell that we always find ourselves into.
Yeah.
Watching tutorial over and over and over and over and over and over again. So it's a problem I feel we need to talk about. Like, can you share your experience on that? Like, how do we overcome tutorial hell?
Yeah. So I think tutorial hell is a big thing. And it's funny how they called it hell. I mean, really a big thing. And almost everyone goes into it, especially in the beginning, where you really do not know because you think that, oh, I need to learn. Like, eh, I don't know these things, so I need to learn to be able to know it, right? But you end up getting into that cycle of learning and learning and learning and learning. And I can give a typical example by myself. Even this year, and that was late last year into this year, I started teaching myself the main stack, right? That is
Mongo,
MongoDB,
Express, Node.js.
Express, React, Node. Then in the course of this year, I started learning React and Nest.js, which is like a framework for React.js. When I started learning it for the first couple of weeks, I was just watching tutorials, right? I just wanted to like, oh, I knew React now, so I wanted to see what can be done with Nest.js. And I started watching the tutorials. I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, I understand this. Yeah, I understand this. I understand this. Then eventually we decided to build a product using Nest.js. Then it got to that point. I realized, oh, like I don't know anything about Nest.js. And I had to go back again
Oh
to
my god.
rewatch these lessons, redo the things, and now start practicing. So it is normal. It is not far away from everyone. I guess if you don't consciously tap into it, like you find yourself doing it without realizing. By the time you realize, oh, I actually wasted the time watching all these tutorials without gaining anything from it. Okay, and it's not as if you don't gain anything from it, but the point is that you just not grab the experience, like you don't get the experience. You think you know, and that's what happens. And in programming, the
Yeah, I
knowledge
think
of something is not as worth as the experience of it. There are two different things. Like, okay, I know
mm,
about Nest.js. I know it's a React framework. I know it talks about how you can do this and that, how it makes rendering better, how it has all of these wonderful things in there. Like, I know about it. I have knowledge of it. But then, do I have the experience of it? Am I able to build something? Like right now, if you give me a project and say, "Hey, Obed, do this with Nest.js," are you going to
guys.
be able to do it? So that is the whole point. And most of us get stuck in the knowledge of
Mm,
it. Like, and because in school we've been taught that the more you remember, the more you know. Like if you can remember the things that you've learned, then you know it. But in programming,
mm.
it's not the same. So we tend to
It's not the same.
delve more or focus more on the knowledge of it. Like, I need to know this. I don't remember this. Oh God, like I've forgotten. I need to go and learn this again. So yesterday you learned React JS. Today you're learning React JS. Next 3 months you'll be learning React JS. And you keep learning it
What is
because
getting
you keep forgetting. But then the truth is that it is the experience of it that will carry you along. It's like you staying behind and saying, okay, I know how to ride a bicycle, but you've never gotten onto a bicycle to ride it before. But
You've not ridden a
you see
bicycle.
people ride bicycles because you watch tutorials. Like you go there and watch the tutorials, you read a book. You've seen people do it. So I know exactly
Mm,
how you ride a bicycle. When you want to ride a bicycle, just take the bicycle, straighten it, sit on it, start paddling. Make sure you move the steer in the direction you want to go. That is how to ride a bicycle. Do you know it? Yes, you know it, but do you know how to do it? And that's where the difference comes in. So you're watching the tutorials, you're reading the blogs, but you have not tried it yourself. You've not written the code yourself. It is very difficult to tell that you know how to do it,
To
even though you
get
know
out of the
about it.
tutorial hell.
Exactly. So I, the point is that almost everyone can find themselves in there, irrespective of your level. You have to
Mm.
consciously take yourself out of it
Out.
by trying to get a practical experience. So as soon as you start thinking about something, for instance, in the past 3 days, so I'm planning for next year and seeing
Mm.
what are the technologies that I need to learn. And I realized that initially I was like, okay, next year I want to double down on Next.js. Like I want to be the specialist at Next.js. Then I realized that Next.js on its own is not enough. Like I need a lot more technologies because there are a lot of other technologies that are making waves I need to learn. And for me as an individual, when I say I need to learn, I'm also thinking about something that I'm learning to be able to teach. So
Teach
like,
it.
okay, if I want to be teaching next year, teaching all of these are new technologies that I need to learn as well. So I started listing them. My book is right in front of me. I can open it and show you. Started listing them
Wow.
and I said, yeah, a lot. Like these are a lot of technologies I need to learn. So how? Do I wait till 2024? No. Let me start. Which one
Done now.
is easiest? Not like easiest, but let me see what does each of these entail. Then one of the key technologies for me was GraphQL. Okay, I need to
Gap
learn
here.
Graph. So I just popped up a browser to look at, okay, what's GraphQL. Like I know what it is, I've heard about it, but I don't know how it works. I don't know how to write GraphQL. If I can't put it on my CV that I know GraphQL,
Gap
right?
here.
So I started looking into it. Then I was like, oh, okay, this is fascinating. But I had a lot of questions because I'm coming from the REST API type,
Mm.
like, and it doesn't correlate. Like, I have a lot of questions. Okay, let's try and figure it out. So the first thing I did was to try building something with GraphQL. And this was just even me following the tutorial that I'm following. But then I
On
want to
YouTube.
write every line of code out myself. And at the end of the day, there are things that this person does, you do it and it's not working.
Error.
But then eventually, eventually when you figure that out, then you are able to gain the experience
Oh
of
my
it.
god.
So just by practically typing out the code,
Yes.
even though I was just watching a tutorial and building something with it, I got the experience with GraphQL. So right now, I'm not an expert at GraphQL. I'm an absolute beginner, but then I've gotten some level of experience to be able to now answer the questions that I had, trying to transform my knowledge
Mm.
from REST to GraphQL. So that is the point. Irrespective of the technology you're trying to learn, if you just get stuck and you are the only one who would be able to take yourself out of it, because if you don't, like, I could have decided to keep watching GraphQL tutorials and trying to get answers to all the questions I have and feeling good about me learning it. But then I decided to go the route of, okay, let's try building something with this. I think it will make more sense. And in the process of building, that's when you begin to pick up those skill sets. In fact, I think yesterday I started looking at another technology. I was like, a lot of people have talked about this. How does it even work? Then I tried it out. It's like, oh my goodness, like this is good. Like, but it is the process of trying it out. You could just watch the videos and all, and that is what we are referring to as tutorial help. When you keep consuming the tutorial, you keep reading or watching the videos, but then doing nothing with it, you won't get the experience. So just take yourself out of it, irrespective of how much you have learned. So a lot of people get stuck in there because they feel I've not learned enough to do anything with it.
So Dr. Obed, thank you so much for coming.
All right,
There was a
thank you
little glitch
too.
with the light. So I hope to see you next time. Till
Bye.
then, bye bye.
All right, bye.